Hi, welcome back to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast with your hosts, Chris Harris and John Farquhar. Today, we're going to continue our conversation of driver qualification files and what kind of documentation and things you need to have in there. So today's episode, we're going to talk about drug and alcohol. Gosh, we just can't be going down the road without having drugs and alcohol now, can we? So we're going to talk about drug and alcohol testing, documentation, controls, and some things that you need to know as per your operation. So, hey, Chris, how you doing? Gosh, I haven't seen you in a while.
And this ain't water, Johnny.
Are you sure? That's okay. That looks like maybe gin or vodka. Oh, moonshine. You've been out in the backwoods visiting. Today it's just water, but
okay, right. It is. We do the recordings on a Friday, so I'm not sure that it'll be water tonight.
Well, I was just wondering. I know you're quite the wine connoisseur. Do they make a clear wine?
I don't know.
You'll have, next time you're out on your wine tours, you'll have to find out if they can make a clear wine. So, God, you wouldn't know it was water or wine.
Well, and I will change the subjects a little bit now because I was out at a client yesterday, and one of the owners has a hobby of making what's called fruit wine. And I've never heard of this because all wine, of course, is made from fruit, grapes.
Yep.
But this lady makes wine from apples, from strawberries, and apricots, where she gifted me with a couple of bottles.
Wow.
Oh, I can't wait to try this.
Yeah. I've had an apple wine before. I'm not a wine guy by any means, but I've tried some apple and it was quite different. It's definitely kind of more towards a fruit juice type approach, the stuff I had. But still, it just had a bit of it's got that fermented punch, eh? So I much prefer apple cider. But yeah, it was actually pretty good. So
I'm interested, and I will be trying it. Maybe this weekend.
You have to let me know. Yeah, you have to let me know. I'm curious to see apricot. That sounds pretty enticing.
Yeah. So hey, drugs and alcohol.
Yes, drugs and alcohol. There's all kinds of drugs. There's all kinds of alcohol. And well, you know what? The first thing we want to do is make sure we're not using any of it driving down the road.
Well, and as you know, we are very hopeful that we're going to get the doctor from Driver Check on the show.
Yes.
Melissa has agreed to appear.
Yes.
Because one of the questions I have is, has positive drug tests gone up since Canada legalized marijuana?
Yes. Well, and another question I'm curious to know, because we've seen this in other areas. We've seen other stats go up. Has there been any effect because of the pandemic?
Oh, you mean use?
Yeah, like maybe more positive tests gone up because of the pandemic. Maybe drivers who are, I'm not crossing the border anymore, so I'm using it a little bit more, weekend toking or something like that. But yeah, it'd be kind of interesting. But I like what you're saying with that Canadian rule that went in. How's that affecting the Canadian guys?
Yeah. Anyways, we are talking about drug and alcohol testing.
Yes.
So
yes,
who? We're not owls. Who does have to do? I know.
I could go with a joke there. I'm not going to even go there today. No, we're gonna probably be good today. I'll run it by the end of the show.
Why would we change? We have listeners that don't expect us to be good.
I know, no doubt. So, all right. So, who's got to do drugging?
They don't look to us for our good looks.
No, that's for sure.
All right. So who does have to do drug and alcohol testing?
Well, anybody that operates a commercial motor vehicle that crosses the international border and going into the U.S.
Yeah. And that's another interesting question. And I've asked this in the past. Why doesn't Canada? Because let's be honest, there are some drivers who choose to stay Canada only.
Yep.
Because they are not drug tested.
Correct. Yes. Now, with that said, there are some companies, motor carriers, that have implemented a drug and alcohol testing program for their Canadian drivers, and they are totally in their right to do that. But it has to be part of the condition of employment and whatnot. So, but you can't force an existing driver, say, if you start a new program, you can't force the existing driver into it, but you can say, hey, new hires, hey, we're having this drug and alcohol program. So, and it's good practice. There is no doubt about it.
Well, that, and with the legalization of the Canadian cannabis, I would certainly encourage it. And again, this is a question that I have for the doctor. You know, the drug and alcohol for the States is urine-based. Canada testing, if a policeman pulls you over here in Canada and they suspect you're under the influence of a cannabis product, they will take you to the emergency room, I'm told, and have a blood draw by a nurse. And then the measurement is by THC in your blood, well, which is great. Why doesn't the States do that? Because John, I don't know about you, but I've used when I was in college, way back when, you know, and if I did it on Friday, I certainly don't believe I was under the influence come Monday. But a urine test would say I've got it in my system.
Correct.
Anyways, I think we're going to delete all this.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting because I think Doc Melissa there can probably shed some light on that, because I know Canada's rules are basically you cannot be under the influence, whereas the U.S. rules is, well, it's not about influence. You just can't have it in your system. So
I think we're going to delete all this part just because we'll save those questions for Melissa.
Sure. There you go. Sounds good.
But anyways, so John, if you are a U.S. bound carrier, you are saying that you have to test.
Yep.
Okay. Well, how many tests are there?
Well, there's pre-employment testing. So at the time I hired.
Pre-employment. John, but I thought I could request the records from the previous company and not have to spend the near $100 or whatever it is for a pre-employment test. Is that not true?
That is true. Yes, you can do that. You can kind of use that as an exception. So that's part of the pre-employment process of testing, right? So, but again, if you're a new driver to this program and say you've never been tested before, or you've never worked for a carrier, so therefore you've never done a drug and alcohol test, then, well, guess what? You get to do one now. So,
well, and also, how many of the previous employers are sharing that information? They spent $100 doing it, and you know.
Yeah. Well, the hard part is it's bad enough trying to get reference information from these previous employers, let alone drug and alcohol. So I'm kind of going to jump a little ahead of myself here. That's what the purpose of the Clearinghouse is going to help us with. Right. And we'll talk a bit about more of that in a minute. So, but so pre-employment is basically your first step.
Well, and let's bring the Clearinghouse into it, because is that not part of the hiring process, using the Clearinghouse?
Yes. You have to check the system to find out if that driver is registered in that system, and then it would tell you if they've had any positive tests. Right.
And I mean, that's the beauty of the system. Once the Clearinghouse has been in existence, I guess, for 3 years, it's my belief we won't have to do the request from the previous employers, because all the information will actually be housed in the Clearinghouse, and it's going to make this one part of hiring so much easier.
Yeah. The only thing that'll happen is if you're a new driver, then you wouldn't be in the Clearinghouse. So you would register, and then you would have to do a pre-employment test. That test would get registered in the Clearinghouse. So, and then you'd be good to go. You could go work for anybody without having to do another pre-employment, as long as you stay in the system.
Yeah, and that just reminds me, some people might say, well, why do we have this Clearinghouse thingamabobber? And a true story, unfortunately, as I understand it, there was a coach bus driver applied for a new job. And when he applied, he did the pre-employment and tested positive. Well, back in that day, there was no legal way that potential new employer, there was no right that they had to report to the existing company that this guy tested positive. And so it went unreported, because that's everybody was following the law, and this driver crashed and killed many on his bus under the influence. And so they realized that there's this huge gap in the drug testing
Yes.
thing, and they filled it quite nicely. I think the Clearinghouse is doing a great job, and will speed things up and just make things.
It will.
So much.
It will. And I just want to clarify for people, when we talk about the Clearinghouse, this has nothing to do with Ed McMahon and the Clearinghouse sweepstakes draw. You're not getting any money out of this. You're going to have to pay.
Well, and it's not very expensive. I'm trying to remember what the fees are. $100 a year and $10 a test, I want to say.
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
PSP?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know there's an admin fee, there's a maintenance fee and stuff like this, but so best way to find out. And I'm sure it probably changes from one consortium to another. I don't know if it's a hard fast, because there's obviously the Clearinghouse fee, and then there's what your provider would charge. So I would strongly urge you to check with your consortium, your drug consortium that's helping you to manage that. I'm sure they'd be able to give you that information for sure.
Yeah, I forgot. There is, you're right. Yeah. The Clearinghouse fees are, and then the people that access it on your behalf, there's another fee for that.
Well, and I do know that you have the ability to manage your Clearinghouse yourself as a motor carrier, or you can use your drug consortium. So, and I know, talking with a number of clients, they've gone, I use my drug consortium, and one of the common ones is Driver Check, and that's who we're going to get on the show here. We've had them on before, but we're going to get them on again. But Driver Check will take care of all that for you. So it's almost like having somebody that sits at the desk in your office, and just that's all they do is take care of that. But probably the fees are a lot cheaper than having a full-time staff member.
Well, and you just know it's taken care of correctly if you're using a good consortium.
Yes. Well, because the fines from USDOT for drug and alcohol violations are horrendous. So you want to make sure you're doing things right.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to talk about one of the other drug testing things in a minute, but specifically talking about post-accident. But let's save that to the end. So we got pre-employment, and then we got random.
Random. Yes. Random. So, like you get the Scottish guy in a random test.
Well, you got the right shirt on today. You know, that shirt could be a kilt.
That's right. So random testing. Well, tell us, what's random testing about?
Well, I mean, random's kind of easy, because if you're with your drug consortium, likely every quarter they just send you a list, and it is generated by the computer, and it is literally random, even though John Farquhar might get pulled every quarter.
Oh, yes.
And somebody else may not get pulled for years. It is random. And just follow along with your drug consortium. But what I wanted to talk about with random, one of the errors I find way too frequently is when the companies get their list, they reach out and say, hey, John, by the way, you're on the random list, so let's get it done next week.
No, you're not supposed to do that.
No. That's not legal, John.
No, it's not. No.
I believe, and this is going from memory, leave a comment if I'm wrong in the show notes there. Leave us a comment. But I believe that once you inform the driver, first of all, they have to be on duty when you inform the driver. They can't be off duty. And then once you do inform the driver, they must go immediately to go for a drug test. And I know we always tried to make sure it happened within 2 hours of being informed. Sure. In my company, when we were doing it, our drivers always tells you how long ago this was. They had to phone us to say, hey, I just cleared the border. So this would be Windsor or Sarnia. Oh, you just cleared the border. Oh, guess what? You're on the list. And we had a testing spot in London. So on their way back to Mississauga, they had to stop in at the Husky in London and do their little donation. But that was on duty. They were coming back. And we also knew that they were going to be off for the following 36 hours is how we always tried to do it, because we wanted to see if we could, when it's practical, get the drug test results back before we dispatch that driver again. Because nothing worse than having a driver 10 to 20 hours away and getting a positive test.
Yes. Yeah. Good luck moving that load now. You're in trouble. Yeah. So, but you're right. Yes.
One of the reasons I wasn't a driver, but I was in the drug testing pool with my A, because if we had to, Chris could go down there and bring the truck back.
Yep.
And the driver. We wouldn't leave the driver behind.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I know a lot of times when I had my trucking company, we would try to coordinate it before they headed out on a trip, if we could, or we would do it just like you're saying, catch them on their way back and go, okay, let's get him set up, and he's going to be at the yard at 2:00 in the afternoon. Cool, he can jump in his car and then he can take and run over and do a test and be there within 20 minutes. So we had a testing facility within 15 minutes of our yard there, so it kind of made it convenient. But a lot of times you're trying to coordinate it. So if drivers are coming home late at night, the testing facility's closed, so I got to wait till Monday.
Yeah,
so,
and yeah, we tried not to test on the way out for the same reason. Our runs were long enough that the driver could be miles away and testing positive.
Right.
And the problem with that, just for our listeners, can you imagine if your driver tests positive, they are no longer legal to drive in the United States.
Yep, correct.
And if they had a crash, good night, nurse. It wouldn't be pretty.
Nope, it'd be 100% at fault, even if you weren't at fault.
Yeah. So it would just not be pretty. Even as you say, even if it's not your fault, my God, it would be an ugly court case.
Yeah, it would.
So
it would. Yep. So
all right, the next one. Let's get it. This is my favorite one, because this is the one that is most, in my opinion, misunderstood.
Good. That must be. Oh, okay. No,
go ahead.
Not what I was thinking. I was going to say reasonable suspicion.
Oh, okay. Well, I forgot about reasonable suspicion.
Yeah.
Let's tackle that one before we get into post-accident. Okay, reasonable suspicion.
Yeah. So reasonable suspicion, which, has a bit of a tie-in with random, because reasonable suspicion can be random. So one of the problems that I find a lot with motor carriers is they don't have staff that have completed training on reasonable suspicion notification. They don't understand what it is because they haven't done the training program. So,
well, and I run into because I work with smaller fleets. When I ask this question, they go, the boss is trained. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is he here 24/7?
Right. Exactly.
Doesn't the boss, he or she, take vacation? Why do we only have one? And this is an opinion. All right. So you need a minimum of 2, but I believe for the cost, it's just easier to get all of the personnel who have direct contact with the drivers. So, for example, dispatchers. Why aren't all the dispatchers trained in reasonable suspicion? It's what, an hour-long video course?
2 hours.
Okay.
An hour for alcohol, an hour for drug.
All right. So a 2-hour video training course, and I know there's a fee. Yeah, but you do it online. Why? Let's get all the dispatchers done, and that would make it so much easier.
Yeah. I've even, with some companies, depending on the size that they are, I've even suggested get some of your maintenance staff involved because drivers interact with mechanics. I'm coming in, I got a problem with the truck. Can we talk about it? Can I get you to fix it? Well, hey, you're interacting with that driver. Now's a good time to kind of, I'm looking at his eyes. Oh, God, he's really, he's just starting his trip and he looks like he's exhausted. What the heck?
And I think that's a great idea with the mechanic because or with the mechanic, maybe the supervisor, because perhaps a mechanic is under the influence and they're working on our trucks. Now, that brings up a whole different issue because the mechanic wouldn't be part of the U.S. drug testing rules. But you got to...
Well, I've been to a couple of companies where the drivers the mechanic, 2 of the mechanics at this one company are actually listed as as the U.S. drivers because they've had to go down and rescue a truck across the border, whether it be Buffalo or Detroit. So these guys were doing the drug and alcohol testing in the event they had to go down because they had an A license. Everybody that had an A license was tagged. So at this particular company.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great practice. I'm just thinking of the mechanics likely wouldn't be part of the U.S. drug testing consortium, but there's nothing wrong with recognizing the signs of abuse. And then you could take appropriate steps, legal appropriate steps. Maybe you have to talk to a lawyer or an HR specialist. But at least you would recognize that one of your mechanics has an issue and offer them some help. It wouldn't be a bad thing. So great idea for the mechanic, John.
Yeah, cool. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, so then on to the one that you were talking about is so misunderstood, which is?
Post-accident drug testing. And the reason I believe it's misunderstood is when I ask, okay, well, when do you have to do a drug test after an accident? Some of my clients go, damn, I drug test after every accident because I don't want that coming back on me. And I go, oh my God.
Yeah, you don't have to every time.
Well, you don't have to every time. And what happens if on the one that you didn't have the legal authority to test, that driver comes back positive?
Ouch.
Now, I shouldn't have tested.
Yeah.
But I now know he's a drug user.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That just opens up litigious environment quickly.
Like what I don't know what, and I can't even give any advice as to what to do in that circumstance. Yeah. Because you're in a real situation. You can't obviously you can't send a drug user out on the road. But if you shouldn't have known, how do you do corrective action? And if anybody out there has an idea, comments, please. But so that's the first thing that I think is greatly understood.
So do you have any information as to what the parameters are as to when people should be testing post-accident?
Well, John, what a segue. All right. So
look at this. This looks like some great information, Chris.
Well, this is right from the Federal Motor Carrier. As everyone can see at the top of the screen, in case you're listening to this, this is part 382 of the FMCSRs. So Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, and specifically we're in section 303. So that's 382-303. And look what it says on the screen, human fatality. So there's a couple of reasons for post-accident drug testing. There's 3. And for one of them, there's only one trigger. For 2 of them, there are 2 triggers.
Correct.
Okay, so human fatality, if your driver gets a ticket, you've got to test.
Yep, no matter
Citation
what.
Issued,
no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yes, and it just says here, you've got to, if it's a human fatality, ticket or no ticket, you've got to test. John, you want to do bodily injury?
Sure, bodily injury. So if there's immediate medical treatment away from the scene, so in this situation, the occupant or the injured would be carried away by EMS, emergency medical services, and if there is a citation that's issued to the commercial motor driver, well, then guess what? We've got a test. We've got to take that driver, send him out for a test. Now, if there is no citation issued, even though we have somebody that's taken away by ambulance or EMS, then no, we do not need to test. If there's no citation issued, no need for a test.
Okay, so that's a 2-trigger event.
Yep. Exactly.
There's somebody injured, and did your driver get a citation?
Therefore, you got to test. If he did get a citation, you got to test.
Right, so that takes 2 triggers, that one.
Yep, because if there's no citation, then no test required.
Okay, disabling damage. Go ahead, Johnny. Do disabling damage.
Oh, geez, this is where we've got some damage, and the vehicle is towed. Now, I think this is where a lot of people get confused because, well, my truck wasn't towed. It doesn't matter if your truck was not towed. If the other party was towed, then your driver received a citation, then you must test. The driver must test for drugs and alcohol. Now, if the driver did not receive a citation, then no need for a test. We're in good shape. No need to worry about it. But so this does not matter whose vehicle is towed. Any vehicle that was involved in the incident. So if there were 4 vehicles and one of those vehicles was towed, then and you received a citation, you're going to have to test.
Right. We won't get into it in this program, but there's a definition of what a tow is. And a quick, dirty example would be your truck gets towed because of a flat tire. Well, believe it or not, that doesn't get classified as a tow.
No.
So,
exactly.
You've got to understand what the FMCSRs mean as what a tow is. It's disabling damage.
Right, exactly.
A flat tire is not considered disabling damage.
No.
So,
but if it busted the tire off the front, like the rim and the hub and whatnot, that's disabling. Yes.
Right. So, and again, these are things that good reasons why you want to understand what the FMCSR is. And again, mainly because if you test when you don't have the legal authority to test, and something comes back other than clear, the quagmire that you are in is deep.
Exactly. Anyway. Well, one easy way to remember this, like all your yeses are directly tied into a citation. So if your driver receives a citation, regardless of what the incident was, you're probably going to have to test.
Yes.
So the only exception there is a fatality. Whether you receive a citation or not, you're going to have to test no matter what.
Yeah, and to be, I don't want to say crude, because this isn't really crude, but to be a little bit rude, you could say hearse, nurse, or tow.
Ooh, there you go.
Okay, so hearse, nurse, or tow, and a hearse, yes, you've got to, but nurse or tow, meaning medical attention received away from the scene would be the nurse, and tow, then you need the second trigger.
Yep, correct.
All right, so if I have this accident in Kentucky, I'm going to test the driver when I get him back to Southern Ontario because it's easier for me, right?
Oh, no, you're not. Oh. That's not allowed. No.
Why?
Stop. Don't pass go. Do not collect 200. So just below that screen.
Yeah, right here. It says the drug testing has to be as soon as practical.
Yep. So
as soon as practical is when it starts.
So there is some particulars right here with alcohol tests that says that if you and some things here that if you do not administer the test within a certain timeline of receiving a citation or of the incident, then you're going to create some more quagmires right off the bat here. So things that you need to be aware of. So the 2 hours is one limitation.
And then for alcohol, it's after 8, you must cease attempts. So it says here, 8 hours following the accident, the employer shall cease attempts to administer an alcohol test. So we've got as soon as practical, then a 2 hours. And then if after 2 hours you didn't get it done, you better make some notes as to why you didn't get it done.
Exactly.
Because that's the first. Document. And most reasonably, often, especially if it's a more serious crash, your driver may not be released from the scene yet by the officer. So you just want to record the officer's badge number, say, hey, my driver wasn't released from the scene yet. 2 hours has expired. And then 8 hours, that's when you cease. Now, John, what if my driver goes to the hospital? He's unconscious. She's unconscious. I can just go there and take a urine sample from the hospital and do that?
Well, they'll probably, good chance that the hospital will do a toxology, which means they'll probably take some blood because they want to find out what's wrong with you. But if you're unconscious, it kind of leaves everything up in the air, does it not?
Not really.
Okay.
You can't. The driver.
Why not? Come on, I want to.
The driver has to volunteer.
That's a good.
You need the driver consent.
Yep.
Okay, so the driver has to be conscious in order to take their drug and alcohol, or to do a drug and alcohol test. So if your driver is unconscious, it is not good enough to take a urine sample, for example. and do the testing there. That would be illegal. And again, I don't want you to do anything illegal.
Yeah.
So,
well, and this is, again, all the reason why you need to document, to be able to state, driver was in the hospital, he was injured. There was no way he could volunteer for this by any means.
Yeah.
Not happening. So, well, interesting enough.
He has to be unconscious.
Right.
Because even if he's injured, he could still voluntarily.
Right. So what happens if I am coherent and I refuse to volunteer to do a test? What does that do for me?
Well, that's considered a positive drug test. So that's pretty, again, that's pretty damning. All right, the last one. So that's for alcohol. We've got as soon as practical. Then the 2-hour limitation, the 8-hour limitation, where we cease now to do the alcohol. How about drugs?
Well, we've got a little bit bigger window here with drugs. That's what's kind of interesting here. We've got up to 32 hours.
Right.
So, but again, I think I shouldn't say I think, I know that if you don't follow the rules, and the rules would be as soon as practicable.
Yes.
Right? So you don't wait to go, I can have the driver home in 15 hours. No, we need to do it now, because if he's under the influence of drugs at that time, we park his butt. I say his, but his or her. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had accidents in Buffalo, and my clients have said, I'm just going to bring the driver home to St. Catharines to do the. No. There's lots of testing consortiums or testing places in Buffalo.
Yes.
So, which brings up the next question, John. How do I find out? Like, gosh, my driver is in Texas and has an accident. How do I find a drug testing spot to send my driver?
Well, first place I go to is my drug consortium, the people that help me with my drug program. They have access to all the places North American wide. So this is where it makes life a little bit easier. Work with your drug consortium. Don't try to do this yourself.
Yeah, and your drug consortium will likely be asking you many of these questions. Was somebody injured? Was there any of the vehicles towed? Did your driver get a ticket? They should be hopefully coaching you. But you should know the rules as well. All right. What else do we need to discuss here for drug and alcohol, post-accident, random?
Well, one of the things is we've, as part of the hiring process, we've got lots of great documentation that needs to be completed. So, and that needs to be part of the drug and alcohol file. But it shouldn't be in the driver qualification file.
Oh, why not, Johnny? Tell me more.
Well, this is private information, and it's not to be shared with everybody in the company. Last thing we need to be doing is letting people know, Christopher here, he went and had a positive drug test this week. Y'all hear about that? He was jacked up on cocaine. He was what's that? He was jacked up like a fire monkey on Mountain Dew. So, yeah.
Well, and you're not to be sharing this type of information with those damn insurance safety people.
Exactly. Well, interesting enough, it's funny you say that, because I was just in an evaluation this past week, and there was drug and alcohol information, and it was previous reference history information. As part of the pre-employment, the driver had never been before, and they were requesting previous employer information, and all that information was in this file. And I'm like, no. And they were like, but it's in a locked cabinet. I go, but who has access to the cabinet? All the operational people and all the safety people. I said, we have a problem. We can't do this. It has to be controlled by one or two people in the company with a designated employer representative, DER, and it should be locked up on its own and kept separate. And the last thing I need to do is see this stuff. That's not part of my job. So lock it up.
That kind of brings in, I think that was a good segue to PSP, pre-employment screening report, because the PSP report is to be used for hiring purposes only and viewed only by those people making the hiring decision. So very similar to the drug, where it's not to be accessible to everybody. The PSP reports are not to be accessible to everybody. So perhaps and I regularly see PSP reports in the driver file,
Yes.
which
yes.
I don't object to myself. I don't know how you feel.
I'm not bad with it. It's the drug and alcohol that's probably the biggest concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say about the PSP reports, the personnel files shouldn't be, in my opinion, accessible to everybody in the corporation anyways.
Agreed. Agreed.
They also should be in a locked cabinet and with controlled access.
Yep. Well, and this is where good, and and there's many people that do this, and when I say people, motor carriers and whatnot, they'll divvy up their file. So you'll have your qualification file, you'll have your personnel file, and then you'll kind of have a training file. Because in the qualification file, I find all kinds of stuff. And it's like, but this has got nothing to do with the compliance aspect of this.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I need a copy of his driver's license, but I don't need his passport. I don't need his SIN number. I don't need his, permanent residency card, all these things and whatnot. That can go in another file. Yes, you need it as a company to validate him, but that needs to be kept under lock and key. You have privacy regulations you have to comply with. So they need to be controlled elsewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, I also... I love color. So when I was doing this, I used to have 4 different colored folders. So, the red, for example, was either dangerous goods or most often it was the you've been a bad person folder.
Yes.
Which I may not want to share with DOT or MTO when they come in. So those warning letters.
They're not really wanting to see it anyway.
No. So I'd have all the warning letters there. The green file, I loved it to be training because it's green's positive and training and all my documentation for training.
Great idea.
New hire orientation and all that kind of thing was that. And then I had a different color for drug and I had a different color for the DQ file. And some companies, as you're suggesting, would have even a 5th file and I'd call it HR or human resource, like all the other things that don't, because I call it a DQ file, meaning driver qualification. We're qualifying the driver to operate our truck.
Correct.
So that's all that should be in there. Abstracts and references are important, and a road test is important.
Documents that are required for the to meet the regulatory compliance aspect of qualifying a driver. Because I was going to say the last thing you need to have in that file is the driver's void check to get his payroll direct deposited. Oh boy, nobody needs to see that.
Yeah, so all those things could go into a separate file again.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Separate these out.
Did we beat the hell out of drug and alcohol testing?
I think we've done a pretty good job here. Yeah, I'm thinking, other than, if you got to feed your guys drugs and alcohol, make sure it's the stuff they won't get caught with. And I don't know that there's anything like that. So just park them all and serve them pina coladas on Saturday with the barbecue that you're going to host, and treat your guys real good, real nice. Maybe even the alcohol-free beer. That's not a bad idea, So, if
anybody here.
What? Well, I just thought of one that's kind of interesting. It's tied in with the alcohol, but not the drug aspect of it. And unfortunately, we see this. I don't want to say too frequently, but we do see it enough where a driver gets charged with possession of alcohol because they stopped at the bloody duty free and picked up a 2-4 to bring home for the weekend. Guys, people, safety people. It is illegal to transport alcohol in a commercial motor vehicle unless it is manifested in the back of the trailer. So you can't carry it in a cab.
The other thing that I will say about that, and this gets subtly endorsed by management, because when dispatchers or management at Christmas time accept the bottle, a gift from a driver, and they know darn well it came from the duty-free store. Aren't they condoning it?
They are very much so. Yes.
I'll tell you, as an insurance guy, and we are both past insurance people, I used to hate seeing that because it says in possession of, or I forget the exact words, in possession of and or use.
Yes.
Well,
yes, correct.
You don't know whether they were under the influence or just in possession.
Exactly.
So it appeared terrible. And if you ever had to go to court, it would be just awful.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's got the same weighting, whether it's possession or use,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter. And the sad part is it's not worth getting that on your driving abstract or your driving record, whether you're in Canada or the U.S. It's illegal.
So, I mean, if you do accept a gift from a driver, you may question, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Did it come
Better
from
see
the
the
LCBO?
LCBO bag.
All right, Johnny.
Yeah, give them a gift card for the LCBO. Way better. Yeah. So.
All right. And with that, if anybody would like our driver file checklist, there is a link down below for that. I was going to say willing to help yourself. Go help yourself to the driver file checklist.
You're welcome to help yourself. Yes. Go
Something like that. Got to get
yeah.
rid of these speech impediments, I tell you.
I know. Well, maybe a little alcohol. Fix that up for you.
Yeah, okay.
And a cigar.
A cigar, yes. Okay.
That would work. Yes.
All right. With that, I think that's a wrap for drug, alcohol, and we hit PSP as well and the Clearinghouse.
We did.
Right? Join us again next week when John Farquhar and Chris Harris bring you the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Take care, y'all.